Okay, well, welcome everyone to today's webinar titled AR's Role in Meeting Treasury Goals. This is Brian from Strategic Treasurer, and we're pleased you could join us as we consider how AR can help deliver on the financial commitments needed to reach the working capital and liquidity targets of your organization. Our speakers for today are Mike Nortman, Business Development Manager at Esker, and Craig Jeffery, Founder and Managing Partner of Strategic Treasurer. Welcome, Mike and Craig, and I'll now turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you so much, Brian, and welcome everyone. Thanks for spending your morning or late afternoon if you're in Europe with us, or at least a half hour of it to cover this topic. Mike, it's good to present with you.
No, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, I think this is our third or fourth webinar between Esker and Strategic Treasurer, so appreciate the partnership. Lots of material to cover in a short period of time. Let's go through the topics of discussion. We're going to begin with Treasury's responsibilities. This is the core focus of Treasury. We'll cover topics such as Treasury is the superintendent of payments. They also have liquidity management functionality and other areas. Many of these have a very, very strong overlap with other areas of the organization, including AR and AP. Then we'll move on to AR's impact on the goals of Treasury. And so we're going to dive in to the interplay. One group's activities impacts the others, and so working together is essential. So we'll cover that topic next. And then how can AR help, particularly how AR can help the overall business, but also Treasury on the financial commitments, the liquidity commitments, the risk management commitments of the organization. And then finally, we have a few takeaways, 3 takeaways, and final thoughts to leave with you. So with that, we'll begin. We'll look at Treasury's responsibilities first. You can see seven items on the list, and your individual list or rubric of what you cover may be different. I'll just talk on a few of these items to begin with. The superintendent of payments doesn't mean Treasury does all the payments, but Treasury is responsible for all cash flows. To some extent, they may not control them, but they're selecting banks. And from a payment security standpoint, that certainly falls under the domain to make sure payments, both in and out, are done in a secure manner as they focus on things like working capital liquidity management as well. So you can see those 2 items on the left-hand side. Working capital is looking at the entire cash conversion cycle, which I'll begin in our next slide, and Mike will cover a little bit more there as well. Liquidity management looks at what's our availability in the short term, not just at month end, but throughout the month, throughout the periods. And then as we look a little farther, capital management, overall capital management, balance sheet management looks to see what's necessary to support the business over timeframes longer than a year. I won't touch much on financial risk management, but there's different areas for coverage around foreign exchange activity, exposure, different types of exposures to counterparties, and across the organization, there's a number of financial risk components as opposed to insurance risk coverages. And the relationship side, tying into service providers and capital providers. The bank relationships are vital to most organizations from a capital perspective, access to credit, but also from an advisory perspective and a service perspective. And those things have to be done not in isolation, not Treasury only to the outside world, but that has to support the entire business. So managing those core relationships is important, and acting as that rational or adult advisor to the business falls into the Treasury domain, and other groups have that responsibility too, to help the business be optimized. So I stepped through those fairly quickly. I'm sure you could list a few more areas if you're in Treasury, what those responsibilities are, but this is a good starting point. And some of those areas, the working capital, liquidity management, tie into this view on the cash conversion cycle, where cash is put into the business, to order goods or to pay for staff. Those goods are then converted to products. Those products are sold on credit. And then there's a process of collecting it, converting, and pulling that cash back out of the conversion cycle. And so this sits on the AR and the payable side, putting cash in and out. And Treasury's responsible for managing the overall liquidity of the organization, third-party cash, bank and credit capital. And then there's an interplay. AR and AP both have a significant impact on liquidity. So the cash conversion cycle is definitely a team effort. If everyone optimizes their own activities without regard to others, we can run into significant problems. So this is an area of working together. AR working together with Treasury, Treasury working together with AR and AP to make sure the overall goals are met. Mike, I've said a lot and I haven't let you get in yet so far, so happy to have you jump in if you would.
Oh, all good, Craig. So yeah, really, focusing on the AR piece of this, it's starting with the billing part, and we're not going to go into huge detail right here because we're going to touch on this more as we continue going forward. But, really at the end of the day, accounts receivable, they're responsible for getting those invoices to the customer. Without proper invoice delivery, it's just going to delay payment coming in. It's going to delay getting that working capital, that liquidity that folks are looking for, right? And then having that plan in place, whether you're using people, technology, processes, whatever it is, to then be able to, based off the terms that are set up for the invoicing, to then be able to collect on that, and how those strategies and policies that you have for being able to collect, and then what are the means for your customers to actually make payment, to actually get that money in. That's whole AR's responsibility and how they look at it. And I think we'll dive a little deeper into that as we move on here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike. So, I'll introduce this slide too and let you, take, comment on this as well. What is the impact of AR or AR's impact on the goals of Treasury?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to start, that's fine. I've got other comments too. So
Oh, no,
what would
sorry,
you
you go
prefer?
ahead.
Yeah, either way is good. Yeah. So the speed of collection, credit management is, when do you extend credit to allow sales to occur? Credit sometimes is referred to by sales as the sales prevention department. But the purpose there is to extend credit to companies who will pay, to the customers who will pay. And that's a way of using the working capital of an organization that's put into receivables to support sales, to get more profitable sales for an organization. There's tie in there too, to how quickly you collect. Slow collection has a cost on an organization, not just from the capital that's sitting out there, but from the lack of knowing what's occurring. I'll mention that one. I'll jump to the last one as well. Payments, outbound payments and inbound payments have to be secured. The criminal activities are far more sophisticated. They're leveraging technology such as AI and all kinds of bots, as well as kind of multi-level, I call it multi-level marketing, but multi-level criminal behaviors by sharing tools to make it easier to penetrate organizations on their inbound payments. Those inbound payments are at risk, as are outbound payments. And so these are all vital to protect, to meet the goals of Treasury, to meet the goals of accounts receivable as well. Mike, I'll let you jump in too, I've been a little bit biased in my explanation there for the Treasury perspective. Maybe you could share a little bit more on the AR hat from the AR side.
Yeah, absolutely. And really from accounts receivable teams that I talk to, what their challenges are is it's a combination of, do they have the staff, the manpower, to the bandwidth to do everything they're looking to do on here, credit management. That's all about risk, right? Understanding how much risk you're willing to tolerate with your customers to help the company get revenue. It's hugely important. Speed of collections. I've talked to many organizations that say, hey, we have a team that handles this. They're very good, but they just don't have the bandwidth to follow up on smaller customers. They got to focus on the larger major accounts because that's where it's worth their time being. And gosh, if only there was something that could help them be more efficient to focus on smaller folks, because in many instances, all it takes is just a simple reminder or a heads up that you're past due, and folks will pay. And then the payment piece too, we'll get into this a little bit later, but just what options do your customers have to pay? Folks, a lot of people are using, lockbox or electronic payment of some kind, but can your customers self-pay? And if so, what options are there? And then how efficiently do those payments process? How quickly do they hit your bank account, depending on different tools and technology you have that can make a difference? And those are all the things that the AR side's really looking at as they tackle this.
You mentioned something, I think it was either early on the slide or the last slide, when you talked about accurate invoicing and, the impact, as we've done studies with, research as well as studies for companies when they're looking at, let's say, working capital, inaccurate invoices don't just need to be corrected. They get delayed. And they're not just like 5 days late. They're usually 30 to 40 to 60 days late in terms of payments, because they get recycled back into the stack. They're the last ones handled. So accurate invoicing, ease of payment, all of those feed back into that overall process of efficient collections.
Absolutely.
Now, Mike, what everybody's hoping for now is that we have a poll question, and we do. So we have a poll question that will appear on your screens if your IT department lets you see that, and we have a stacked poll question. This has 2 questions for the price of 1. The first one is, how would you describe your cash flow from accounts receivable? It's cyclical on an annual basis. Maybe there's a monthly cycle. It's consistent from week to week. It varies based upon projects or events, or you're unsure. I know that's not completely universal options, but that's the first question. Pick the one that's closest. And then down below, it's, do Treasury and AR have a regular meeting cadence? Are they talking in your organization regularly? Is this intentional? Are they meeting? No, weekly or monthly, quarterly or other. Pick what's closest there. And if we're just going to go easy. We're just going to say 75 in the chat box. If 75 people type the word Esker or poll, those will count towards, the goal. If we get 75, we will send all the poll results out with the slide deck that comes out. So preferred word is Esker, secondary word is poll, and we'll go from there. So kind of interesting to see organizations' cash flow, how they differ. Are they cyclical? Are they standard? Mike, as you look at maybe the top section, monthly cycle seems to be most frequent. Annual cycle is about 1/3 of that, almost exactly. And then there's a lot of variability. Any thoughts on this?
I mean, I feel like it stacks up well with folks I talk to when I'm talking to organizations that are looking to improve their AR processes. When that cash flow is coming in, a lot of folks will set up their billing terms to be variable. It's not like everyone's net 30, and the requests coming from your customers. More and more folks are asking for longer terms as well, and then figuring out, are you okay with that? Are you okay with that additional risk, waiting longer to get that cash to come in, right? So there's a lot of things that make this fluctuate, but this doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, just company by company, there's differences. Regular meeting cadence, I guess, Mike, as I look at this, I see 45% have a regular meeting, weekly or monthly, and then there's a quarterly for another 20%. That's essentially 2/3. That's pretty good. I don't know if we just have a bias for people who are on a webinar talking about these interactions and they're farther up the curve, but that strikes me as better than, from the data that I remember from research saying. How would you say this stacks up to the general industry from your experience?
Yeah, I would also feel like it seems better. When I think about so many companies I talk with, when they're looking at technology, how can we improve AR? How can we lower DSO? How can we get cash in quicker? How can we improve our risk and credit management? In many instances, Treasury is not involved in a lot of those calls or meetings. Now they might be aware of a potential project as a whole. What I will say is when they are involved in those conversations and they're reviewing technology, those conversations, they make their stamp known. they have a certain weight in making known the importance of getting the cash in and whatnot. So it doesn't mean they're not aware of it. It doesn't mean that they're not talking with AR. But yeah, when they're actually there as part of the conversation, you can tell a difference.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Mike.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks everybody for answering those poll questions. All right, if we move on to credit collections again, Mike, I'll start and you can close this one out. But
Yep.
on the credit collection side, the decisions that are made impact the income statement. Right? You can say, if my goal is to prevent losses at all costs, well, then you offer no credit on account. And that is truly sales prevention. You want to have sales that are profitable. There's going to be some type of losses, should be relatively minor, but well balanced off. And so it's this goal of how much working capital you want to put into extension of credit. You want those credit terms to be tight, so there's not a loss, but you're supporting sales. And then we already talked about a few of these items on the collection side. Of better invoicing means you get faster collection. More automated processes means less errors. Less errors means payment faster. Um, Getting at your invoice faster means you get paid faster, even if you have terms. It's shown and proved out across the board. But there's a lot of activities here in the two sections and steps of extending credit and managing credit on an ongoing basis, as well as now I'm shipping things out, I'm invoicing, I'm following up on the invoicing activities. Very, very crucial for the function of AR and credit. And all of these have an impact on what Treasury cares about deeply.
Exactly. And, just a couple of quick points I feel like is with credit management, where you typically hear the struggle is you have a huge or even hundreds to thousands portfolio of customers that you're trying to manage. And it's very hard to stay on top of that and to be able to leverage, technology tools that are out there that will alert you when credits are nearing credit limits, when credit bureau scores are doing major fluctuations, when AI is saying, hey, we think an order might be coming in that's going to push them into a credit hold. So you can just be more proactive in managing that risk is critical. And then on the collection side, it's all about getting that cash in hand as quick as possible. So from having accurate invoicing to having things like automated payment reminders that go out, to allow easy access to a self-service portal where customers can make payments, sign up for auto pay, anything just to make it easier to get the cash to come in is where a lot of folks are looking on the AR side to impact that.
Yeah, I like that one example. You get like automatic reminders to pay,
Mhm.
as opposed to like you've got limited resources. Who are they going to be calling? Who are they going to be creating a custom email to? Versus what can you have your machine help support? All good points.
Super quick, 40 to 50% of a collector's time is spent researching who to call and then or who to follow up with and then drafting the email to do it. That can be practically completely automated and your collector can get half their day back. It's a very powerful step. And then I briefly mentioned it on the last slide as well, but then the actual part of collection, getting the payment. To me, there's two parts of payments that's key to focus on as far as the speed of which it comes in. One is going to be what payment options are you offering your customers? Do they have to write a check that goes to a lockbox? Very common. Do you try to set up any kind of electronic wire type payments, things like that? Also quite common. A big question will be, can your customer, can they call in and place a payment over the phone? A lot of customers will allow that. A lot of companies allow that. Do you offer your customers the chance to self-serve? And how easy is it for that customer to get to a self-service portal? Make it so they can get their own copy of an invoice rather than you having to resend an invoice out. Make it so they can do automatic payment or just do the payment themselves. Anything that makes it easier on your customer makes it more likely that they will pay on time or more frequently, or at least less past due than prior. So that's step one. The other piece with payment is when that customer makes the payment, how long does it take to hit your bank account? If they're writing a check and sending to the lockbox, you got to figure a few days for postal mail and all that fun, right? And then even once it hits the bank account, it still needs to hit your ERP, right? Someone has to allocate that cash into the ERP to show that the payments have hit. Because that ERP at the end of the day is the source of truth and where all your data and DSO and everything's coming from, right? So you can have payment options that could take multiple days till the funds hit your bank account, or with self-service portals and various technology that's out there. I talk to companies that their customers will make an ACH payment online, hits their bank account that day, and it's allocated in their ERP next business day, instead of the typical 2 to 5 days for an ACH payment. So those are just a couple key things to think about when you talk about processing electronic payments and how that can impact directly not only your DSO, but just your working capital. And gosh, getting payments in a couple days quicker is huge.
Yeah, I think you were being generous on the mail front too. It seems like it's gotten
Yes.
more and more challenging in so
Yes.
many ways. All right, our next double stacked poll is up: KPIs and security training. So the first one is, do Treasury and AR have any combined KPIs? You have key performance indicators that are aligned. You're both working towards the same goal. Yes, no, or unsure. And second, if we're talking about payment security next, does your cybersecurity training include formal, recurring payment-specific security training and testing? Now note the payment-specific security training part of that. So go ahead and answer those. We have enough responses in the chat box for poll and Esker, so we're all good there. Thank you for doing that. No more are needed. And Brian will post a link to Esker and Strategic Treasurer to follow our companies on LinkedIn. We'd love to see it. There's also some items in the chat box about how you can see those questions if they're not appearing. So we'd love it if you could follow. It's a click, and then you log in on LinkedIn and follow our companies. That is great to do. All right, and we've got to these half-hour webinars are quick. We've got 7 minutes left, so we'll look at the items. Nearly almost 40% have some combined KPIs. Your initial reaction to that, Mike?
I find it interesting. I feel like you're going to have different KPIs for sure, but I also feel like there's certain ones that definitely overlap as well. So I get where the numbers come from there.
Perfect. On the cybersecurity training, that includes payment-specific security training. We're now at half, which is excellent. That's good progress over the years. Thanks everybody for answering those. Those things matter to us. I know most of you like to see this data because everybody typed Esker in the chat box. You'll get those results sent forward. So I'll cover this one about better security. The idea that there's increased losses due to increased automation, increased availability, or the democratization of criminal tools that criminals can use, is creating a better payout. Crime is paying very well. It's paying better, and our defenses have to increase. And so when we think about inbound and outbound payments, people are trying to either intercept those or to get you to change where you send your payments to if you're AP, and then the AR is following up saying, where is the payment? And they say they cashed it, or the money has gone out. We sent it to the new account you designated, and the money's gone. But technology is required, and training and testing. The human element as well as the technology element matters. And so when your team is well trained, there's less disruption. They're able to respond more quickly. They may be a little bit more skeptical, but less time is spent on issues or following up on fraud. It keeps and protects the reputation and leads, or there's at least a correlation to lower losses. And so that's a key area for AR and AP and Treasury. Better security and an educated workforce really matter. So, Mike, we'll talk about all these things together. So, on the awareness side, there's this issue of competing KPIs where, someone's trying to do something that's optimal for them, but it impinges or impairs another area. One good example is sales tries to get the best price. They get a huge purchase, and that drives up capital. It uses capital, and it's fighting against the other organization. But when they're aligned, there's some good fit there, and so that's an awareness piece that I would think of. I'll let you jump into.
Yeah, I would just say seeing this, just have understanding the KPIs and having access to the data. I talk to a lot of AR teams who it's a challenge just to have the data that they want. And I know a lot of folks look at, again, various tools and technology that do help with that.
Yeah, on the execution side is, the helping AR get the right services with the right partners so that there's a clean back-end process to post as well as a fast process to get liquidity is that nice sweet spot of both key drivers are being met there.
Yeah, and I feel like on the AR side, having a process in place for when you should follow up with past due customers. What's your credit policy? And not just to have it, but to be able to ensure people follow it. And again, a lot of companies are looking for tools that ensure that happens. So yeah, just being able to execute the plan you have.
And for most of the people on this call, it was you guys have regular collaboration between AR and Treasury, and that is awesome. And if there's a significant portion that don't, and that's worth being intentional about that, working with the other areas in the cash conversion cycle. That matters greatly. It's normally enforced heavily if there's a big working capital plan, but for organizations that may not focus on working capital, they may focus on liquidity or efficiency only, or those are the terms they use. Working together from a goal perspective, from an understanding the flow and challenges the others matter a lot. And sometimes Treasuries doesn't pay much attention to the other areas and needs to support them more effectively. And leading companies, there is that collaboration.
I think you hit it, Craig. I don't think there's anything else to touch on there.
Awesome. So awareness, execution, and collaboration, those are three things for how to proceed. And you may be looking at it and say, hey, I'm really good on two of these. Now I can focus on another area, or I'll set up that call with AR or Treasury. But I know we covered quite a bit of information really quickly. Mike, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thanks everybody for joining. We have a few additional key things to cover, and Brian, I'll invite you back in. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. The CTP credits, today's webinar slides, and a recording of today's webinar will be sent to you within 5 business days. And be sure to download the new ebook that Strategic Treasurer did in conjunction with Esker, titled Transforming Payments, Improving Cash Flow in AP and AR, by clicking the link in the chat box. Thank you, and we hope you have a good rest of the day.